So, hello everyone. We're here from the Silicon Valhalla Italian Society KTH. I'm Vittorio and I study computer science at KTH.
And I'm Francesco. I study computer science at KTH as well.
I'm Federico. I'm studying industrial engineering at KTH.
And I'm also Federico, and I'm also studying industrial engineering at KTH.
Pretty easy to remember.
And today we're pleased to host Alberto Trevisanato, and I would like him to introduce himself.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Alberto. I'm a master in management student, almost done with my studies, and have been in and out of startups for the past couple of years. We're gonna get into everything that I've been doing and that I will be doing, but yeah, now currently moving to Milan for my next adventure, and yeah, hopefully I'll give you some interesting perspectives.
Cool.
All right.
Well,
Great to hear. Great to hear.
Thank you very much.
So let's delve a bit into this because you just said that you're basically at the end of your studies, but I think you've navigated through several internships, and I would love to hear more about what do you think it's the real value of an internship from a perspective of a student who's almost done studying and is writing their thesis, and what's the takeaways? What were your takeaways from the internship you've experienced?
Yeah, I'll start with giving some more context on what I've done so people can understand better. I've done now 5 internships, which is, I think, a pretty good number. I'm done with doing internships, to be honest. And I started in finance when I studied economics. I have a different background than you guys, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do when I was, starting my university path. And I got into finance because all of the ambitious, smart kids around me were doing finance. And I thought, okay, I want to do this in my life, I guess. And I, of course, found it interesting. And so my first internship was in a small office M&A in Milan. I was in my bachelor's second year. And that was an interesting experience, but it made me realize that it's not what I wanted to do. I didn't see myself. I looked around and I saw people that I didn't want to be 10, 20 years down the line. And so I started exploring and thinking, okay, what do I actually want to do? And one thing led to another. I kind of got introduced to the world of startups, and that caught my interest. And from then on, I started to move from traditional, finance to startups. And so first I worked again in Milan in a firm that was helping founders raise capital. And so I kind of got my foot in the door into the venture capital world. Then I went to Berlin and I worked in a venture capital fund, which is Rocket Internet, pretty big name. And then I went to San Francisco. I stayed there for 6 months working again in a venture capital firm. And this kind of, got me introduced to the actual, real world of startups, the stuff that happens in San Francisco. Then I also worked in a startup in Stockholm, actually, at Sana. And I started my own project. So I kind of did a bunch of different things. And the main takeaway I would say is internships are very important when you're young and you don't know what to do, because it's the best way to gather information about whether you like something or not, and whether you're good at something or not. So when you're young, you should treat internships as much as possible as a test to, first of all, understand what you like and what you're drawn towards as a personal, as a person, as a human being. It should give you a basis of understanding what you're good at. You should try to do many different things to understand what you're good at, because there's a good chance that what you're good at is also what you like. And then it should be a ground for learning a lot. It should be a way to learn many skills and add them to your repertoire of skills, and then go out in the real world and actually develop those skills. So I guess those are the main values of an internship. And one thing that is, I think, important is not all internships are going to be great. I've had internships that were not very good in terms of, one of the 3 of these aspects, or even all of them. Some internships I didn't learn much, but all of them led me towards a better understanding of what I want for my future, what I want for myself. Right. The last thing I'll add is, I think there's actually today maybe an overvaluing internships in a way. because I see many students I talk to many students that are young, like first year bachelor, starting out, and some of them really think, oh, if only I could get that internship, then maybe I could get that, that place at the big tech, or I could get that opportunity because I have this internship on my CV. And I think that's the very wrong frame of mind. Internships are good. I just told you all the reasons why they're good. But we live in a world today where you can do so many things. You can do so many projects, especially if you're in tech, that don't require you or any permission by anybody else. You don't need to be working for a company to do them. You can embark on projects by yourself with your friends, things that pique your interest, and that will give you so much of these three things of like understanding what you like, understanding what you're good at, and understanding what you want from life, just by doing these projects without having to do internships. So yes, internships are very good, very important. They will give you a lot of information, and you should treat them as a great learning opportunity, but you should not kind of glorify them and see them as the only way to do that. There's things that you don't need anyone to hire you for that you can do that will get you the same results, and that will allow you to actually get internships as well. So yeah.
Right. Love it. And I love that you said as well that, everyone, ambitious students you mentioned, are attracted to this, let's call it Bermuda Triangle, finance,
Yeah.
consulting, corporate, this big tech world. And reality is you're not necessarily, you shouldn't necessarily look at these worlds as the goal for an ambitious person, maybe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's good reason why these kind of very glamorous places attract people. There's, you're gonna meet other smart, ambitious people, which is always good. You're gonna probably learn some skills, and they're gonna give you a big, golden pass for everything that you want to do later in life. It's a way of doing, I'm gonna do an internship at BCG or at McKinsey or at Goldman Sachs, and whatever I want to do next, I probably will be able to, because it's not going to close me any doors. So there's good reasons for doing them. And there's this concept of career liquidity, where there's certain opportunities, certain things that are very liquid, like working at Google will give your next employer a very good idea of the skills you have, of the type of person you are, and the value that they can place onto you. And then there's other things which are much more difficult to evaluate in terms of the skills you acquired, like, I don't know, going abroad and doing volunteering, or like doing your own project that's about, I don't know, creating music, whatever you want. And that's going to be harder to evaluate, but maybe it's going to bring you closer to what you actually want to do. So I don't think it's not necessarily bad that young people want to do the prestigious thing. I do think, however, that it's a problem that many young talents get stuck then in these sort of traditional careers and get drawn by the circle of prestige and status of like having to, start it as whether it's, consultant and then senior consultant and then make it to partner. And that's a problem, because those are people that should be probably working on other things rather than optimizing performance of big companies already that are making a lot of money. Usually the people that are in these big firms, whether it's Google, Goldman Sachs, or BCG, they are smart, and they should be probably working on stuff that is important for the world. And so there's value in pursuing those opportunities and getting career liquidity, especially if you're early in your career and you want to do, a couple of internships, get those names on your CV so that you can tell people you're good, like people know that you're smart. But then you should probably, if you're ambitious, the best way to have impact and to actually make your dreams become real is actually either to work on your own thing, or to work at a smaller firm, for many different reasons that we can cover. But that's going to actually allow you to have more impact on the world or on the people around you, or whatever you want to do. You shouldn't be probably stuck at the big firm.
Totally agree. And coming from Politecnico di Milano, I can really relate to this, because if you were one of the smart kids, you had to go for MBB, IB, or those prestigious career. But I feel like the wind is kind of changing towards the big tech scale ups that are becoming the next really glamorous spot to work to. So
Yep.
that's good.
Yeah, it's changing. Thankfully, it's changing. There's now more interest in working in startups. Now working in startup is more prestigious than it used to be, certainly. And
Exactly.
if you go to San Francisco, working in a well-funded, cool startup is more prestigious than working at a consulting firm by far. Like,
Exactly.
it's funny because like it's such a stark comparison. If you go to Milan and you say you work at a startup, people look at you weird, like, okay, fun, you're playing ping pong for the whole day, and then and you say you're a consultant, and people respect you a lot. And then you go to San Francisco, it's the opposite. You say you're a consultant, people immediately get bored, like, what are you doing, SF? Go to New York.
Go back to
Yeah, but the world is catching up. The world is catching up, for sure.
No, that's great. And I don't think everyone is made, to work in a startup. And maybe not everyone is made to work in the corporate world. But as you said, it's crucial, at least, that us as students, as people who are going to approach their next career life, have that opportunity on the table, that ambitious people, that talented people have the opportunity of shaping what it's about to come, And that's, I think, something that you probably have lived in San Francisco, that you probably have experienced, I hope. So I would love to hear more about that as well.
Let me just double click on that, because I think, so here's why you should work at a startup rather than work at a big company.
Right.
If you work at a big company, you have many, perks, like having a big name on your CV, and, having probably like prestigious project or prestigious clients or whatever it is, or big things that you're working on paper. But you're going to be a cog in the machine. You're going to be optimizing your landing page if you work in big tech. You're going to be crafting slides if you work at BCG and aligning logos. You're going to be doing stuff that is not really important for the whole mechanism, because if you weren't there, probably someone else could do your job. If you work at a startup, you are suddenly, if you work at, let's say, a 5-10 people startup, you're suddenly very important. There's going to be a lot of autonomy placed on you, a lot of trust placed on you, which means your rate of learning is likely going to be much, much faster than at a big firm, because you have a level of autonomy, a level of control on the things that you have to do that is much higher. And Vittorio, that is true, that's not for everybody. It's definitely more stressful. It's definitely more, the pressure is higher. But it definitely is a better school for learning skills, because suddenly you're not a cog in the machine. You're someone that is important for the business. And the cool thing is that when the startup is small, you could argue the impact is smaller than working at a big firm. Yes. But the cool thing about startups is that, if things go well, then you are revolutionizing an industry or a market or the world. And so there's potential for you to actually be crafting and shaping and changing the way the world looks by the things you do, the work you do. And I think there's not enough value, especially in Italy. People don't recognize this enough. People don't think about the fact that when you work in a startup, you are very important for the business, and you're potentially very important for the world and the future of the world. There's a caveat. You have to work for a good startup. You don't have, like, the very important thing is your team, the team that you are working with, should be top quality, top level, very, very, very strong. Because otherwise, it's probably going to be counterproductive to work at a small company that is not a magnet for talent, and there's not very, very strong profiles, because then you're going to probably learn the wrong things. You're not going to learn how startups work properly if you have someone that has no clue. And so that's the caveat. You shouldn't mistake this for, I should just work at any startup. No, you should work at a good startup with very, very strong teams, which are not easy to get into. It's still tough. Maybe it's not as tough as working at, the big prestigious firm, but it is not easy to get into those environments as well, because they're very selective, because they recognize the importance of talent. So yeah, wanted to double click on that.
Yeah, that checks in very much. And I wonder if you had any just brief, quick tip on how to recognize, or what are the signals that you would want to pick up to recognize an actual good environment rather than just noise of other startups?
Yeah, so how do you find a good team? Like what's you know, how do you evaluate a startup from the outside?
Exactly.
Definitely not easy. There's proxies you can use. Personally, I wouldn't work for a startup that has raised no funding. Um, but that's simply because, you know, let's define startups as, you know, small companies that have to grow very quickly and have to revolutionize and change an industry. You probably need to raise money to do it. And if you're not able to raise money, there's tons of startups that don't raise for a while and then raise and then go and do the things more quickly. That's absolutely okay. But the founder that cannot raise a round, if they need to raise a round in order to achieve their goal, it tells me that probably that founder's quality is not very good. So let's assume that, you know, you're evaluating startups that raise some sort of money from venture capital, and then you find yourself in front of a bunch. There's still a lot of startups that raise money, especially now today in AI. There's 10 new rounds happening every day, and they all look super cool. Then you can start looking at different things like, okay, who invested in this? Who are the funds? Who are the firms that invested in this? Are they prestigious investors? What is their rate of success? What other investments have they done before that were successful? That's, by the way, these are all proxies. Like VC funds get stuff wrong all the time. So there's no way you can know for sure. And then, of course, you have to look at the people that work inside. Who are these people? What have they done before? Have they founded a startup before? If yes, that is a very good sign. That's probably a very strong team, because they're going to attract more capital. They're going to attract more customers. They're going to attract more employees. A lot of it is based on, and this also depends on the stage at which you join the company. If we're talking like pre-seed, very super early, you're probably going to have few metrics to go with. You're not going to have a lot of information about, maybe traction and stuff like this. So in that case, it's harder. But once there are some metrics. Let's say you want to join a Series A startup, then there's stuff that you can look at in terms of growth, in terms of retention, in terms of how much the product is actually valuable for customers. Those are all things that are good, and you should ask in the interview process. You should not be afraid of asking, what's growth looking like? What are the prospects for the next 12 months? What's the obstacles that you're facing as a company, and all of that important stuff. And a lot of it is also vibes, to be honest. Like, just talk to the founders, see what the vibe is, and do you actually want to work with these people? Do they seem like genuinely good people that you would be happy to work next to? That's a huge one. At least for me, a lot about productivity and doing good work is being surrounded by people that you enjoy working with. And if you don't enjoy working with people, then it's going to be way harder to actually do something good. So that's the general kind of high level idea.
And I'd love to emphasize on that, because I think the last thing you said, it's crucial at the end of the day, because you must love both the team and the idea that you're working for at the end of the day, because I think that weighs way more on the decision of, I'm going to work for a startup rather than going for a big tech or something else. That's something that weighs way more. Do I see in this person, maybe this person didn't receive much recognition, but is generally a smart human being, is a smart individual. He's trying to do something in which I believe in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that's definitely important. You want to work for a startup that, if the future that the startup wants to create materializes, you're happy. Like you believe in that future as well. This doesn't mean that you should only work at companies that are, I don't know, solving cancer or doing space research or stuff like that. But because then you get paralyzed, because then, like, if you're young and you want to get experience and you want to, learn, the array of possible companies to work for suddenly is very small. And so you shouldn't necessarily only work on, I think, especially when you're young and you're accumulating experiences, you shouldn't only work at, the company that you want to work for the rest of your life. I don't think so. I think if you believe in the idea, if there's a very strong team and you think this is a learning ground, especially if it's an internship, go ahead and take it. And then you can always, it's always a two-way door. It's you start, it's usually going to be like 3-6 months internship. If it doesn't go well, it doesn't matter. You learn something, you know, you manage to find some interesting people and then move on to the next thing.
Great. So, okay, San Francisco.
Sorry, San Francisco. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
San Francisco, you know, everyone wants to hear SF,
That's a hot topic.
right?
Yeah,
Hot
San
topic.
Francisco. Yeah, okay. So San Francisco was a bit random for me because I wasn't planning to go at that time. For me, it was a dream to go to San Francisco and work there, but I just didn't even think about the possibility that it would be a thing, a possible thing at this stage of my life. And so I found this opportunity randomly in a Facebook group, and I was actually applying for startups, not VC firms anymore. But I saw this opportunity for a VC firm, and I was like, I saw the location of San Francisco, and I was like, what the hell's going on? Let me apply. and then it went well. And so I found myself catapulted into San Francisco 2 months later. And it was a very, very life-changing, but big life-changing experience, more than any other experience I've ever had in my life. Because I suddenly found myself in this place where I was surrounded by super positive people, super ambitious people, and super smart people. And the combination of those three things is very contagious, because you find yourself surrounded by people that are cheering you on, that are cheering each other on, that have big dreams, and they're not afraid to say the dreams that they have, and they are smart, and that inspires you. And so I started meeting people my age, younger than me, that were doing things that I thought were completely crazy. And, you know, I kind of knew about San Francisco. Like I knew about the world of startups at this point. I knew how it worked. I know that was the hub. I watched YouTube videos. I watched the Y Combinator YouTube videos. Like I thought I knew what it was like. But then once you get into the room and you talk to the people, then for me, everything changed. And I guess that's in a nutshell my San Francisco experience. It changed my life in a way that I didn't think was possible, especially in terms of opening up my ambitions, my horizons of ambition, and not be afraid to speak my ambition and to speak what I want to do and to say, to talk about my dreams and stuff like this. Because it's in Europe, it's more frowned upon if you talk about your dreams or your ambition. People sometimes are, you know, don't want to hear that stuff and think you're a dreamer. That's not the case in SF. And so it allows you, and it's especially if you're seeing people around your age doing things that are absolutely insane, then it's easy to ask yourself, why can I not do it? Like, you see these people, and most of them are very smart. Yes. Some of them, you talk to them and you're like, this person is definitely smart, but I don't think I'm dumber than them. Like, I don't think they're very much smarter than me, you know? And so then that's magical, because then you think, if they can, why can I not? If they can do this, and if they can have big dreams, and if they can go ahead and execute them, what's stopping me? What's stopping me? The answer is probably fear. It's probably some sort of imposter syndrome. We are humans driven by fear, and that's gonna be always the case. But if you're in an environment that takes that fear away from you, because it puts people around you that are doing the thing, then you start doing things and you start having less fear. And that's what happened to me. I saw these people around me doing crazy shit, and I was like, okay, I need to tell my Italian friends, my smart, ambitious Italian friends that are having that want to work in consulting, that there's more stuff out there, that you can actually work in a startup, learn a lot, and have a lot more fun than working in consulting. I have many friends working in consulting, so it's respect consulting. But the point is, there's many talents, I think, in Italy that need to know that that's a possibility. And so I started also doing my own thing, and I started talking to founders, talking to talents, and explaining what I had to say and what I was seeing in San Francisco, and people started resonating with the thing. And that's how Unlinear was born. That involved into 5 degrees, but we can talk more about that later. But it was all born in San Francisco, thanks to what I was able to see there, which is, I think, the definition of a life-changing experience.
That's inspiring, truly. Should we buy a ticket?
Yeah. No,
I mean,
Let's move all there.
I mean,
guys, I'm telling you this, like, and I've seen this firsthand on many people, because I've become friend when I arrived in San Francisco, I didn't know anybody. I had no contacts there. I only knew this person, which name is Eric Torricelli, who you probably know. And I had talked to him a year before for the Silicon Valley Fellowship. And I actually got selected for one of the first batches, but I never ended up going for the fellowship. And I knew him, and that I kind of knew him. Like, I had a 20-minute call with him, and he was the only person I knew in San Francisco. So I texted him, and he was amazing. He like introduced me to the whole community. He started introducing me to the Italians in San Francisco, and eventually we became friends. And then I started kind of being the community leader for the Silicon Valley Fellowship, meaning while I was there, I followed the batch. I took the fellows around, and we can talk about what the Silicon Valley Fellowship is for those who don't know. It's basically a program for young, talented people from all around the world that want to see what San Francisco is like and what the Silicon Valley is like. And they get the chance to visit companies, visit startups, visit VC firms to kind of get a grip, get a good sense of what the ecosystem is like. And so I followed the first batch, not the first batch. I followed the batch when I was in San Francisco, when I was working for the VC fund. And then I did it 2 more times. I did it after I went to Stockholm. He texted me again. He said, "Do you want to come back to San Francisco and follow the next batch?" And I was like, "Of course." And then he did it again a month. I just came back like 2 weeks ago from San Francisco for my 3rd batch. And so I've seen firsthand the impact that San Francisco and Silicon Valley has on young people that see it for the first time. It's insane. Like, it's always the case. Like, there's never a time when someone has told me, "Oh, I actually, I had bigger expectations. This is actually not as, as hyped as people make it out to be." Every time, everyone is like, "Oh my God, my whole life changed in a week of talking to people here." So I think if you can, when you're young and you're interested in startups and tech in this world, one of the best things you can do is book a ticket to SF, go and spend 2 weeks there, sleep in random people's couches. You don't have to spend a lot. You can actually text people, and the beautiful thing about San Francisco is people are happy to help. Like, if they recognize you're a young, talented person, they're going to think you're the next Mark Zuckerberg, and so they're going to give you a spot on their couch sometimes. If you text enough people, you're going to find some. And so I think that's a very high leverage move for someone that is young and still exploring. Go and spend a couple of weeks in San Francisco, talk to people, and the people that you're going to meet there are going to be able to shape the trajectory of your life more than you could ever imagine. So yes, get a ticket.
Truly amazing.
Fantastic.
Yeah, just for
amazing.
information, SAS Young has an offer to go to San Francisco for about 400 euros. So I think you should all check it out.
There you go.
That's
There
bad
you go.
ticket.
That's why Stockholm is such a big hub now. It's because of
Right.
this.
Exactly.
Yes, but it's
Exactly.
Right.
And that I would want to expand a little bit on. What would you think the situation in Stockholm would relate to the San Francisco's one? What are the key differences, key similarities? Is there actually this? It's just hype. Is it just hype around Stockholm, or there's actually something onto it?
No, I don't think there's hype. I mean, there is hype, but it's definitely not just hype. The big difference, of course, between San Francisco and Stockholm is that the ecosystem is it's like orders of magnitude in size difference. The amount of capital that is in San Francisco, the amount of startups, the amount of people even is way larger for obvious reasons. In San Francisco has been the tech capital of the world for the past 20 years, for as long as tech existed. So that made it a magnet for people from all around the world that wanted to do startups and work in tech to go there. And so, of course, the big thing about San Francisco is that there's a density of people that is insane. You walk into any coffee shop, you walk into a bar, you're going to meet someone that works in tech, which is super valuable if you're working, if you're founding a startup, if you're building things, and being surrounded by investors, by other founders, by talented engineers is basically, it changes the odds of your success, of the success of your startup, 100%. And so it's hard to compare these ecosystems because they have different maturities, but there is, you know, in Stockholm, something is happening and something has happened. And it's not only now that it's happened, like it's probably all stemming from the success that Spotify and Skype and Mojang and King and Klarna then a bit later. Like there's many tech successes, global successes that came from Stockholm that now inspired this new generation of entrepreneurs and new generation of companies that are growing. And you know, there's Sana, there's now Lovable, there's Lagora, there's many. And so there's definitely something about that environment that you guys are in, which is super valuable. And I think part of it is definitely, you know, past founders that did the thing and showed people what they can do. I think that's probably the most important ingredient. There's investors who made money thanks to those, you know, those early successes that are now investing more and attracted more capital. So there's a lot of capital going in. There's crazy talent. KTH, you guys are a fantastic university, which is absolutely insane in terms of the, I think there's some statistic of the YC founders coming from KTH is very high, proportional to the amount of students there. So there's definitely a list of ingredients there. It's not one thing. But for the size of the ecosystem, for the size of Stockholm, the outputs that it's generating are outsized, are unheard of. And so I think it's a great place to be. If you have to be in Europe, if you want to be in Europe, I think Stockholm is one of the big ones, together with London, Berlin, and Paris, probably. Zurich, I mean, there's many, but Stockholm is definitely one. It's definitely up there, which is significant considering it's significantly smaller ecosystem than the other I mentioned.
And would you say that's an advantage in some way?
Advantage compared to what?
Compared to having a larger ecosystem, of course, it comes with benefits, having a larger scale and order of magnitude. But would you say, it's because I've heard people mentioning that having less, how would you say, a more interpersonal relationship within all this kind of smaller ecosystem, whereas you know more directly, more people could be mentioned as one of the benefits of having a smaller scale. Maybe also less noise to cut out. I mean, could you see any benefit from having a smaller scale environment rather than a huge one, or is it just like the same framework supply, just on a smaller scale?
Yeah, there's probably advantages. The stuff you mentioned is probably true. Like the fact that, you know, if there's 10 founders, if there's 1,000, the 10 founders are gonna know each other better than the 1,000. The true differentiator is competitiveness, probably, in the fact that if it's a smaller ecosystem, there's less competition, in the fact that if you win, we both win because the ecosystem is growing. Whereas if there's 1,000 people that all want to win, it's, you know, some have to die. And it's funny because San Francisco is a very competitive place. Of course, it's very competitive because the best minds are there working, but it's also in a way supportive. Like it's hard to explain, but there's kind of like this supportive competition where I'll help you, you help me, and we're going to be useful to each other in some way. Everybody, like, it's not out of kindness, I think. There's a lot of individualism, a lot of American, you know, individualism, but there's also this aspect of helping and competing with other people. So I think in some capacity that could be an advantage, the fact that you have a smaller ecosystem, you can have a close relationship to the other founders. But I don't think it's that big, because in the end, if you're in San Francisco, you can have a smaller circle of 10 founders that you know very well. There's nothing that that impedes you. Now, maybe it's going to be harder to reach certain people, but it's so interconnected that I don't think that makes a difference. And there's many small ecosystems in Europe where that could be true. Like if it's true for Stockholm, then Milan could be also, you could say that's an advantage as well. So I don't think that's the real advantage. I think the real advantage of being in Europe that is not talked about enough, if you're a startup founder, is the ability to attract talent. If you're in San Francisco, you're at war with some of the most well-funded companies in the world to attract the best engineers. You have the AI labs that are paying millions of dollars a year for engineers to work for them. How on hell are you going to be able to attract that type of person if you're a 5-person startup that raised 2 million or 3 million? It's going to be very tough for you to attract top quality talent. And so that gives you an arbitrage opportunity if you're in Europe, because if you're in Europe, you're going to be able to, if you're good, raise a substantial amount of capital. You can raise American capital, even if you raise European capital, and then you can pay people more, because in Europe it's not the case yet that big tech companies pay so much. If you're in London, the companies that are paying more are actually still investment banks, probably, or hedge funds, or the finance stuff. Tech is still, like, if you go from Google San Francisco to Google London, the difference in salary is insane. And so for startup founders, I think there's a big advantage in being in Europe, in the sense that they can attract talent. Now, if you look at it from the talent perspective, I think there's value in both. There's value in being in Europe, but there's value in being in San Francisco. In terms of maximizing opportunities, SF, I will have to say, is probably still gonna win, even now today with this AI boom in London, Stockholm, wherever it is. So yeah.
I was curious about one thing that you mentioned before, maybe, but in part I wanna to hear it directly. Is when you were in San Francisco, right? Did you ever feel like, since you were surrounded by this many ambitious people, smart people, investors, and anyone, did you ever feel like pressure to perform, or did you ever feel any sort of pressure in doing, oh yes, I have to do this, and so this sort of pressure in performing?
Yes, I did, but it's, in a way, it's a positive pressure. This is very personal. Like, it depends on what type of person you are. If you're competitive, if you're not competitive. There's people who suffer competitive environments a lot. I know many that couldn't stand being in San Francisco. So let's assume that we're talking about someone that is fairly competitive, that is ambitious. If you're fairly competitive and ambitious, being in San Francisco is probably going to be better for you than worse in terms of pressure, because it's positive pressure. Like, it's hard to realize, but everyone is on their own path. Everyone is playing their own game. You should really not be falling into the trap of comparing yourself to others anywhere you are, because everyone is playing their own game. Everyone starts at a different point. It's easy to compare yourself to others because that's all we have around us, but you don't have to. And if you have this realization and you can live it, and you're in SF, then it becomes magical, it becomes powerful, because you see people around you that are creating things, that are putting things out in the world, that are not scared, that don't give into fear, and you can be influenced by that if you recognize that you cannot compare yourself to the 17-year-old Stanford dropout that is going through YC today. Like, I met this guy. There's no way you can compare yourself to him or her, because they lived a different life. They were born in San Francisco. Their parents were entrepreneurs. They educated him into being entrepreneurial since he was 3 years old. And they made him go to the best school. They made him study like crazy. Like, there's many different ingredients and factors, but it doesn't make any sense to compare yourself to others. So yes, it can be pressuring, but I think it's a positive pressure. And if you recognize that you're not racing with anybody and you're just getting the best out of the energy that the people are transmitting out there. And funny enough, I actually feel more pressure now that I came back to Europe in a way. I haven't given this too much thought, but I feel more pressure now than I was feeling when I was in San Francisco. And I have a feeling that some of it is from FOMO, that I'm not there and I could be there. Some of it is from the I'm sort of in a transitioning period of my life right now. So I'm more still than I was when I was in San Francisco. When I was in San Francisco, I was working on 5 degrees on linear. And so I was putting more things out there. More action. My life was more oriented towards action. And now my life is a bit more in stall. And that gives me a lot of pressure because I feel like I'm not doing the stuff that I'm supposed to do. And this tells me that if you can overcome the pressure of feeling overwhelmed by the great people around you and actually start acting, then things will fall into place. This is one of the things that I learned in San Francisco, and especially from Max Marchione, which is the founder of Superpower. Go and look into the company. I talked to him twice. And what resonated with me most is that there's the answer to many things is just action. And most of the time, if you're feeling scared, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like life is too much, you can just do the things that you know you're supposed to do and want to do. And then some of that pressure is going to go away eventually. And then you're going to start proving yourself that you're actually capable of doing the things that you want to do. You're going to start accumulating little proofs of it. And then that's going to give you more confidence, and and eventually that pressure is it's never going to go away, but it's going to be less important.
Great.
Love it.
Yes.
Love it. 100%.
Yes.
I think acting is a good way of start to put things and let things fall into the right places by themselves, you know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
you know, I think it's kind of arrogant to think that, okay, I'm going to be able to change the world all by myself with the acts that I'm doing, believing that you can actually take action over things that you cannot control, you know. And I think it's very important that you take into account of that as well. And yeah, but you know Silicon Valley, Silicon Valhalla here in Sweden. So you've been in sauna for 6 months, am I right?
But less, 4.5,
Right.
5.
And
Yeah.
I don't know, I would love to hear more about, we've made a comparison, but I would like to hear more about, okay, what does it mean to be in a scale up? Because sauna was a startup, I would say. Now it's more of a established reality. It's more of a scale up. Now they're trying to really break through, I believe. So I would love to know more about how was that kind of experience inside there.
Yeah. Sauna was professionally the best experience I've had in my life, by far. Not even comparable to all the other experiences I've had so far. And there were many reasons for that. I think I've mostly worked in service companies before. So I was working, in M&A, and then I was working in the fundraising, kind of like investment bank for founders. And then I was working for a couple of venture capital firms, which are very small structures with few people that are usually on the older side. And then suddenly I found myself in this reality, which was basically a bunch of 25-year-olds, 25 to 30-year-olds that were incredibly smart and amazing people that completely changed my perspective on work. Like suddenly I would go to work in the morning. I would be super happy just to talk to the people at breakfast and sharing the day with them and spending the day and then staying until 10, 11 p.m. at night listening to techno music. It was just formidable in terms of the people that I found, how not only smart they were, because that that I kind of knew before, but how they were very good people. Like you could tell that somehow at Sana they were able to attract amazing from the heart people, and that makes the whole difference, because not only you're surrounded by smart people, you're surrounded by people that are interested in you, that are usually kind and loving, and that made the whole experience great, fantastic. And so I arrived in Stockholm in July 2025 after I spent 6 months in San Francisco. And so, I feared before I left San Francisco that I would be underwhelmed by suddenly being back in Europe and being surrounded by people that were maybe, not as crazy as the founders I was meeting in SF. And truly, the two experiences are very hard to compare. Different ecosystem. I was working in a venture capital firm, and then I was working in a startup. Like it's hard to compare. It's not fair to compare. But I was afraid that I would be underwhelmed when I would land in Stockholm. And then I landed in Stockholm. I met all of my colleagues, and I was so happy. I learned a ton, not only in terms of skills, like hard skills, but I learned a ton on how to manage projects, how to see the nuances in the way people behave. There's a bunch of things that I think I learned through that experience, but I definitely felt the amount of talent that is present in Stockholm, and the ability that Stockholm has to attract international people. Like at Sana, it wasn't only Swedish people, it was Swedish people and Italian people and Portuguese and French and Spanish. Like it was a pretty good mix of cultures that I wasn't necessarily expecting to find in Stockholm. Like you would think Stockholm is, as you would think Milan is a place where you would meet mostly Italians if you work at an Italian company in Milan. I was thinking that was the case in Stockholm as well, and instead they managed to attract people from all around, which is not easy. Like you're bringing people into a city that speaks a different language, and where there's no sun for 8 months in the year. Like it's not obvious to convince people to move to that country, and you know this better than me. So I was overall, like, it was overall an incredible experience, and I was surprised in many positive ways.
Because I believe that I would say I moved to Sweden also because I feel that the power to change things is in the hands of the young. Older people believe that this power is in our hands, not in theirs anymore. They're more offering us the right instruments or the right mentorship that we need to actually shape and change something that already exists, because we grew up in the world we live in right now. So now it's AI. We grew up with AI. So we think, we act, we evaluate stuff in taking that for granted, so we can build something on top of that. Whereas maybe someone who's older, who's saw the development, understands it, but maybe is not capable of really coming up with a breakthrough idea or the breakthrough so concept, patent, whatever it is. Have you felt that?
I was gonna ask you, why do you think that is? Like, I know I'm supposed to answer the questions, but because I haven't necessarily interacted with more like older people. Like at Sana, the older person was, I mean, there were a couple of like OG guys, but the average age was 25 or 30 maybe, but super young. And so I'm actually interested in getting your take on this.
I think it's that the question that you just asked me is already quite itself an answer. You said, we worked at Sana, which is a well-known name in entire Europe. There were a couple of OGs. Everyone else was between 25 and 30. I think that's an answer itself. But I have experienced this through professors being at a very good vehicle through which I could make my ideas come to life. I would feel very safe and very enhanced to go to a professor and say, I'm thinking about this. Do you think this is possible? Is this something happening in the world? And I remember professors like taking the time, not 2 minutes, I gotta go, I have another class to teach, taking 20 minutes to explain me, okay, this is how things happen right now. I think you should evaluate this problem from this perspective. Or another example is through KTH Innovation. We have this incubator in the university, and you can apply with your own idea, and they'll evaluate it and try to see if there's a future in that. And the people that come help you are, let's say, older, but they're not there to tell you what to do, whereas they're there to tell you, okay, this is how you generally do things. But if you come up with something greater that you think, everyone is stupid and is doing something wrong, and you think it should be done differently, then come here, convince me. I'm here to get convinced by you that you're gonna, do something valuable. Or another one, and this is the last example I'll take out. I was at this hackathon with Francesco actually a couple of weeks ago, and there were the founder of Candy Crush Soda. So if you relate to the game, he was there with his VC firm. He founded after he exited, and these guys were 50, but they were there speaking with a humbleness of saying, you guys are going to create what's next. I'm here to support. I need to give you capital. I'll give you capital. I need to help you evaluate an ideas and try to tackle what could be the criticalities of your ideas, or what you don't see, you're not seeing because you lack experiences in, I don't know, raising capital, or just maybe perhaps getting customer opinion. So all of these kind of things, and they were there with the humbleness that it was huge from a person that just created a game that made the biggest revenue in entire App Store history. Like, if you're not familiar, like, Candy Crush had 20 billion revenue on App Store, like billion with a B, it's and they were there with a humbleness that just generally impressed me.
Did you actually raise capital from the Candy Crush guy?
I wish, I wish. We got to the final, didn't manage to raise capital.
We got fourth. Come on, fourth.
That's good. That's good.
I totally agree. Like, things feel more accessible here than it used to back in Italy. But
yeah. I think that one thing that young people have is energy and responsiveness, because everyone has ideas, everyone has is breakthroughs, but I mean, young people have the power of do it as soon as possible and actually act like immediately, and that's the edge actually. And then this is to add up to everything Victorian said before.
I mean, that's for sure. Like, it's great to hear that it seems like in Stockholm they understood this, and I do see how that would be possible. Like, I definitely understand the future belongs to us, like to you and to me to a lower degree. I think I'm slightly older than you guys, but it's I mean, it's just a fact. The younger generation are the ones that are shaping what's coming, and so I think there's a very important place that the people that made it before us play into showing us the mistakes they have done and showing us how they achieved what they achieved, and also telling their stories about how they did it, because that's a very important part. Not many people hear these stories and then they never think stuff is possible. I talk to many Italian people that are young and they have no idea what's out there, and I'm like, you have access to the most powerful instrument in the world. Just go on YouTube and look around, like, look what people are doing in the world. Now it's more than ever possible to tell these stories of people who made it before us. And so it's important to tell their stories. It's important that they support the next generation. It's also important that they get out of the way and they let us do the building for the next couple of decades. So it's great to hear that they figured that out in Stockholm. I see that.
And you have an experience. You know, talked about it here and there. You know, on Leaner, you said 5 degrees. You know, all of this project, and I think you stepped in and decide, okay, I'm gonna take action. You got positive feedback from your experiences, and you said, okay, I'm gonna take action. How did that happen? What is Unlinear, first of all? What is about it, and 5 degrees next?
Yeah. So when I landed in San Francisco, I saw these people doing cool stuff, and I was like, okay, let me find a way to show the young Italian, talented Italian people that this is possible. And the way that I wanted to do it was find very talented people, young and smart, connect them to the best founders in Italy, the best startup founders. And ideally, they were gonna meet each other. The founders were gonna pitch their company, and then the talents were gonna able to talk to the founders and then eventually join the company and get hired. And this was something that I stole. I didn't think about this model. I stole it from 5 degrees, which is this project that they were doing it in Germany. And I was like, okay, I mean, they're doing this in Germany. There's no reason why this shouldn't exist in Italy. Let me do it in Italy. And so I started, posting on LinkedIn and writing bullshit LinkedIn posts. But that worked. Like, that attracted people and were like, oh, this is so cool. Let's do it. Blah blah blah. And I started to kind of like validate the idea by talking to founders and talking to talents and telling them, okay, what do you think about this? Do you think there's a need for this? And everybody was telling me, okay, yes, I want to do this. I want to be part of this. And I see no reason why this shouldn't exist. And then I started talking to 5 degrees, and I was like, guys, can I steal your idea and bring it to Italy? And they were like, of course, go ahead and do it. And so that was how Unlinear was born in the beginning. And for a while, I was in San Francisco, so I couldn't actually do the thing, which was like a physical event in person. And then after a few months, I decided, okay, this project has to exist in Italy. And I was actually vibing a lot with the 5 degrees guys. I was like, I really like these people. They're super smart and talented. They've been doing a great job. And they proposed to me that we would do it together, that Unlinear would become 5 degrees, and I would basically help them expand in Italy. And I was like, that sounds like a great deal. I can do basically the same thing, but we can have an ambition that's European and not only German or Italian. And then we'll see that there might be a future for me at 5 degrees, shaping what the company's going to be like. And so then Unlinear kind of got on the side, and I basically helped them organize this first event, which was a crazy success. Like, I say this with no humbleness, but it was fantastic. There were 6 startups, 59 talents. Out of those, 7 found a job at one of the startups that were present, and now are working there either full-time or part-time, or as an internship. But more than that, the feedbacks that we received, the people were super happy to finally find a place where they could meet other young, ambitious people like them and amazing founders in Italy. And so this is kind of the story and how it went. And now I'm working with them, and Unlinear is evolving into sort of a different project that is taking shape now. But in the end, I think out of all of this interview or podcast, or however you want to call it, fun conversation, like, if someone were to ask me, like, what's the thing you're proudest about that you've done, I would say that. I would say it's Unlinear / 5 degrees. Because that was something that was not existing, at least in Italy, that was not a thing. And I decided it had to be a thing, and I made it happen, thanks to the support of many people. But that makes me very proud, because if I didn't step in, that event wouldn't have happened. Those people that found their next job wouldn't have found their next job. Who knows what they would be doing now? Maybe they would be doing fantastic things even better. I don't know. But I like to think that, that makes me happy. Like, that makes me think, okay, thanks to the action that I had, thanks to my action, I actually produced something that I'm proud about, that has had an effect on the world and the people around me. And that is magical. That is a thing that has not happened for any of the internships I've done. however beautiful and however they taught me stuff, yes, but they weren't I'm not as proud of them as I am about this thing. And so that just tells you about, and I'm just a random guy. Like I genuinely don't think I'm smarter than many people, you guys, and like many people I talk to every day. It's just about acting and hoping it'll work. And in my mind, I was always telling myself, what's the worst thing that could happen? Like if this for some reason doesn't work and this event never takes place, what then? Okay, I tried, I failed, and we move on to the next thing. Like what's the risk? The risk was zero. The cost of organizing the event was zero. You just had to find a couple of sponsors. So, and this is an important message actually. You should always be looking, especially at the beginning, but always through your life, but especially at the beginning of your career, at these asymmetric bets of what's the best outcome, like the best possible scenario if this goes well, and what's the worst possible scenario. And if there's an imbalance there, the bigger the imbalance, the better the opportunity will be. And this was like the craziest example of an asymmetric bet, because if things went well, which then they did, it was going to be very happy for everybody. And then if they didn't, nothing would have happened. I maybe some people thought I was dumb because I posted about some stuff, and then the event for some reason was a failure. I don't know. Usually, for these sort of ideas, these sort of projects, there's only your own reputation on the line, and there's only your fear about being judged by other people. And that's what's stopping people from doing the things that they think should be done and they want to do, that they're afraid of getting judged by others. They're afraid. And I was feeling this, like when I started posting on LinkedIn about this thing, I would have conversations with ChatGPT, and I would ask ChatGPT to convince me to overcome this fear of posting these contents on LinkedIn, because I felt stupid. I was like, who am I to do this? Like all of these stupid shit. And then now I realize how dumb that was. But it took like posting five LinkedIn posts to then that not being that not feeling like anything, like like posting something. Who gives a fuck? Like someone is gonna roll their eyes because, sorry, am I allowed to swear? Because I think I've done it quite a bit. But someone's gonna roll their eyes and think you're whoever trying to do something. Who cares? Who cares?
Love it. And I think with this beautiful who cares, we can close the podcast. We can say goodbye. So it was beautiful speaking with you, Alberto. I, in first person, really enjoyed the conversation. And I think this is also a good point, a good goal of the podcast, that we also enjoy these conversations.
Exactly.
And I want to thank you for that. Thank you for your time.
So valuable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Love
Thank you so much, guys.
Your energy, your inspiring. It's fantastic. Thank you.